here we are again, as we all predicted. At least Tatiana's dad is not calling for hugs and forgiveness. For now, anyway. I'm sure you've seen the details of this case everywhere, so I'm not going to rehash those details. But there were some things about this case that stuck out to me that I haven't seen people point out. And the first is this.
Dean can be seen here at his graduation ceremony from the Fort Worth Police Academy in April of last year. Records from the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement show it's the only agency he's worked for, and that he received crisis intervention training just 2 months ago.
So you mean to tell me that Aaron Dean had only been a member of the police department for 1 year, and he never held any other position other than that one?
Let's start when the video starts. 2:31 a.m. and 42 seconds. The body camera video shows the officer checking the front door of the house. You see the screen door closed, but the front door is open. From there, the officer walks to the right, to the east side of the house. You can see the white car parked under the carport. The officer walks up to the side door. That screen door there is also closed, but the main door, again, is open. So the officer can see into the house. When the officer gets to the back of the house, there's a blue car parked in front of the garage. He turns on his flashlight and checks the gate to the backyard. That's at 2:32 a.m. and 24 seconds. It's been 42 seconds since he checked the front door, and he has not identified himself as a police officer. At 2:32 a.m. and 48 seconds, the officer opens the gate and walks into the backyard. You see the air conditioning unit at the back of the house there. Just 8 seconds later, you see the officer walk to the window at the back of the house. Tatiana Jefferson is standing on the other side of that window. You hear the officer yell, "Put your hands up, let me see your hands."
Put your hands up, show me your hands!
He immediately fires the single shot through the window, killing Tatiana.
The thing that made my melanin tingle about this, or what came to mind, what my melanin brought to mind, or what the ancestors brought to mind, was the fact that the FBI did reports about how the police department is infiltrated by white supremacists. I'm going to ask this question. What if Aaron Dean joined the police department with the sole premise of killing a black person? What if he was let in the police department for the sole purpose of killing a black person? That's not far-fetched. And here's why. The FBI has quietly investigated white supremacists' infiltration of law enforcement. This article was written in 2017. White supremacists and other domestic extremists maintain an active presence in U.S. police departments and other law enforcement agencies. A striking reference to that conclusion, notable for its confidence and police prescriptions that accompany it, appears in a classified FBI counterterrorism police guide from April 2015 obtained by The Intercept. The guide, which details the process by which the FBI enters individuals on a terrorism watch list known as the Known or Suspected Terrorist File, notes that domestic terrorism investigations focused on militia extremists, white supremacist extremists, and sovereign citizen extremists often have identified active links to law enforcement officers. And it explains in some detail how bureau policies have been crafted to take this infiltration into account. So they are developing policies to protect themselves within the department. Although these right-wing extremists have posed a growing threat for years, federal investigations have been reluctant to publicly address that threat or to point out the movement's long-standing strategy of infiltrating the law enforcement community. No centralized recruitment process or set of national standards exists for the 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, many of which have deep historical connections to racist ideologies. As a result, state and local police, as well as the sheriff's department, present ample opportunities for white supremacists and other right-wing extremists looking to expand their power base. Are you listening? In a heavily redacted version of an October 2006 FBI internal intelligence assessment, the agency raised the alarm over white supremacist groups' historical interest in infiltrating law enforcement communities or recruiting law enforcement personnel. The effort, the memo noted, can lead to investigative breaches and can jeopardize the safety of law enforcement sources or personnel. The memo also states that the law enforcement had recently become aware of the term ghost skins used among white supremacists to describe those who avoid overt displays of their beliefs to blend into society and covertly advance white supremacist causes. In at least one case, the FBI learns of a skinhead group encouraging ghost skins to seek employment with law enforcement agencies in order to warn crews of any investigations. That report appeared after a series of scandals involving local police, sheriff departments. In Los Angeles, for example, a U.S. district court judge found that in 1991, that members of a local sheriff's department had formed a neo-Nazi gang and habitually terrorized Black and Latino residents in Chicago. John Burge, a police detective and rumored KKK member, was fired and eventually prosecuted in 2008 over charges relating to the torture of at least 120 Black men during his decade-long career. One cop tortured 120 Black men during his decade-long career. Burge notoriously referred to an electric shock device he used during interrogations as the nigger box. In Cleveland, officials found that a number of police officers had scrawled racist or Nazi graffiti throughout their department's locker rooms. In Texas, two police officers were fired when it was discovered that they were Klansmen, goddammit! One of them said he tried to boost the organization's membership by giving an application to fellow officers he thought shared his white, Christian, hallelujah, heterosexual values. Although the FBI has not publicly addressed the issue of white supremacist infiltration of law enforcement since that 2006 report, in a 2015 speech, the FBI Director James Comey made an unprecedented acknowledgement of the role historically played by law enforcement in communities of color. Interesting. James, interesting. Okay, this article's long, I gotta keep going. All of us in law enforcement must be honest enough to acknowledge that much of our history is not pretty. Comey and the agency have been less than forthcoming about that history's continuation into the present. In 2009, shortly after the election of President Barack Obama, a Department of Homeland Security intelligence study written in coordination with the FBI warned of the resurgence of a right-wing extremism. Right-wing extremists have capitalized on the election of the first African-American president and are focusing their efforts to recruit new members, mobilizing existing supporters and broadening their scope and appeal through propaganda. The report noted singling out disgruntled military veterans as likely targets of recruitment, people who already have training and in killing people. Right-wing extremists will attempt to recruit and radicalize returning veterans in order to exploit their skills and knowledge derived from that military training and combat. The report concluded that the lone wolf and small terrorist cells embracing violent right-wing extremist ideology are the most dangerous domestic terrorism threat in the United States of these Americas. Released just ahead of a nationwide Tea Party protest, the report caused an uproar among conservatives who were particularly angered by the suggestion that veterans might be implicated, and by the broad brush with which the report seemed to paint a range of right-wing groups. Faced with the mounting criticism, DHS Secretary Janet Napolitano disavowed the document and apologized to veterans. The agency's unit investigating right-wing extremism was largely dismantled, and the report-led investigators were pushed out. They stopped doing intel on that, and that was that. Heidi Berich says, who leads the Southern Poverty Law Center's tracking of extremist groups, told The Intercept the FBI in theory investigates right-wing terrorism and right-wing extremism, but they have limited resources. The loss of that unit was a loss of a lot of people who did this kind of work. Federal enforcement agencies and the general FBI, the marshals, the ATF are aware that extremists have infiltrated the state and local enforcement agencies and that there are people in law enforcement agencies that may be sympathetic to those groups, said Daryl Johnson, who was the lead researcher in the DHS report. Johnson, who now runs a DT Analytics and a consulting firm that analyzes domestic terrorism, says the problem has gotten a lot more troublesome. Remember when this article was written in 2017. Johnson singled out the Oath Keepers and the Constitutional Sheriff Peace Officers Association for their anti-government attitudes and efforts to recruit active as well as retired law enforcement officers. That's the biggest issue. It's greater now than it's ever been, in my opinion. Johnson added that the Homeland Security has given up tracking right-wing domestic terrorists. Given up! God damn it. We can't do it. If they were black, they would have all the resources in the world. It's only the FBI now, he said, adding that the local police departments don't seem to be doing anything to address the problem. There's not even any training now to make state and local police aware that these groups and how they could infiltrate their ranks. A spokesperson for DHS declined to comment on a 2009 report of the agent's specific concerns about white supremacists and right-wing groups. After a series of investigations uncovered substantial numbers of extremists in the military, the Department of Defense moved to impose stricter screenings, including monitoring recruits' tattoos for white supremacist symbols and discharging those who espouse racist views. And I'm going to say this, if the people checking the tattoos have the same views, what? The military has completely reformed its process in this front. Blah, blah, blah. Reforming the police, as it turns out, is a lot harder than reforming, and I'm going to say than pretending to reform the military, because of the decentralized way in which thousands of police departments across the country operate, the historical affinity of certain police departments with the same racial ideologies espoused by the extremists, and an even broader reluctance to do much about it. If you look at the history of law enforcement in the United States, it's a history of white supremacy, to put it bluntly.
Do you think that there are white supremacists on the police force?
Yes.
You didn't even pause.
Have you seen some of the Facebook posts of some of our suspended officers right now? Yes.
Heather Taylor is an almost 19-year veteran on the St. Louis Metro Police Force. She points to the recent report by the Plainview Project, which flagged thousands of racist and derogatory social media posts.
So this is the Plainview Project that news report spoke of. And they are so well organized, okay? So you just hit that down there. And let's just look at Dallas, right? Let's look at all. They even got it by salary ranges. Come on, okay? 1,000 results. When you click on it further, it tells you who posted it, how much they make, their badge number. I mean, and if you just go scroll down, it's just racist post after racist post after racist post.
Including some from 22 current St. Louis Metro officers, like this one that compared Black Lives Matter to the KKK. As president of the Ethical Society of Police, a predominantly black local union, Taylor's mission is to root out racial discrimination among police. If implicit bias training is mandatory, it doesn't seem to have left an impression on Heather Taylor. Have you been through it?
No, it was optional.
These are text messages from January 15, 2018 at the MLK parade. Text message sent to the defendant asked, "Are you working this parade?" Other messages came in from the defendant. "Yes. Grandsons are on the other side if she can get through." Message sent to the defendant, "When does this end? LOL." Outgoing message from the defendant, "When MLK is dead, ... Oh wait, ... Incoming message says, "Ha." Outgoing message, "Geez, 2.5 hours on 3 hours of this." Outgoing message, "Just push them or spray with your pepper spray in that general area." Dated March 9th, 2018. Text from Martin Rivera. Incoming, "Damn, I was at this area with 5 different black officers. Not racist, but damn." Outgoing message, "Not racist, but just have a different way of working, and it shows."
Like a white professor said to me, "Dr. Welsing, I hate to admit this, but in all social gatherings, when it's just us as white people and there are no black people present, we are saying negative things about black people. And the assumption is that everybody present is in agreement." I said to the person that I understand you're simply talking code about the maintenance of the system of racism and white supremacy. See, this is so important for black people to understand. Not for the purpose of we don't have time to hate white people, but we have time to understand this 500-plus year system of thought, speech, and action out of our respect for ourselves, to understand it and to see that this behavior on the part of a tiny minority of people on the planet who classify themselves as white, that this behavior comes to an end. But it won't happen if, we say nigger doesn't mean anything, or defecating on a person or urinating on a person doesn't mean anything. It means that I have you in such a position of submission to me that I can do anything that I want to do to you, and you can't do anything about it.